Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as, investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are on Wednesday, December 27th. We're going to take a look at QS today. So Quantumscape doing a nice job climbing out of this down channel that we had on the chart. So it's far enough away from that I'm going to get it off the chart at the moment in an effort to not just further clutter things. Now, there's a bit of an uptrend support that seems to be developing. I'm going to leave that off at the moment because what I'm mostly focused on for the time being are all of the gaps that are basically presenting QS with, maybe a pull one way or the other. Now, to the upside, we have a couple, right? You can see them here. I'll just focus in for now on the nearest in one, which would fill at about 873. So give it much more than $1 lift at the moment, and that's been filled up to about here for now. So it would get into the unfilled part of that gap at about 833, would fill it at about 873. Now, the one up from that would kick off at about 967. So, like I say, if folks are interested, we can come back and address that if and when it fills this closer in gap to the upside. Now, to the downside, there's also a gap. So this is where it gets sort of like interesting, from a gap perspective. So if it does come down in price, I would be on the lookout for a gap that it would enter around 613, and it would fill that gap at about, let me see if I got this right. No, we're a little too low. Okay, I think that's right. It would fill it at about 576. Yeah, so we got that. Okay, so that's sort of the question for me at the moment. It's doing a good job sort of leaping up, consolidating, leaping up, and now this is maybe a bit more of a consolidation than you'd want, but it did fill this gap, right, with this price action. So now it's trying to reclimb and reclaim that 727 level as support, and the question then becomes, okay, if it does that, then can it stretch toward that 807 level? If so, then it gets very, very close, right, to that up gap, 833. If it rejects 727, comes down, tests 666, and then depending on what it does there, if it slips toward the lower sixes, gets pretty tight into that 613 pretty quickly. So those are the things that I'm mostly looking at the moment now. And I think our swim side of things, was up out of the channel for quite a while here. Big, on those big gap down days, push it all the way very quickly to the lower bound of the channel, and actually through the lower bound of the channel. Came back, tested the mid-range, lost a bunch of further price action based off of being pinned between that and the lower bound of the channel, and then was able to regain the mid-range, and for the time being at least, has been putting in a bunch of action between the upper bound and the mid-range. That said, the channel is quite compressed at the moment. It still isn't, this very stretched, very wide here from all the volatility. So it sort of could be priming for some motion. It could also spend quite a bit of time kind of consolidating and moving relatively sideways between both of those gaps before it makes a strong and more volatile move in either direction. So if that sort of continues to take shape, meaning mostly sideways motion, what I would look for, if that's going to happen, is it mostly pinning itself to the mid-range of the channel, right? Maybe it dips a little below, maybe it comes up above a little bit, but mostly sort of like continuing to move off of the mid-range. But I would also be looking for the TTM squeeze indicator to start to put in some trigger candles, which, the lengthier ones happened back here, right? You had trigger, fire, trigger, fire. That's where a bigger move came off that second trigger fire, which is not uncommon. But if it starts to pin to the mid-range or sort of interplay consistently with the mid-range, and then starts to put in some lengthy trigger candles, then, that could get really, really interesting and could sort of like give us a pathway or more clear route toward the volatility that would be either big push down getting into this down gap into the sixes, or big push up, overcoming this $8 level and then pushing up toward the upper eights. So we'll see, but it's in an interesting place at the moment. All right, folks, I hope that you've had a happy hump day, and as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.